In the 5th year of our marriage, I asked David for a divorce. The reason was that I found potato chip crumbs in his passenger seat, and he never let me eat in his car. He scoffed. Just because of this? This time, I didn't lower my head like I used to. I just looked at him and said seriously, yes, just because of this. Chapter 1. When I went to get the car washed, the attendant frowned and asked me, "Ma'am, there are food crumbs in your car. I suggest you do a deep interior clean." I was stunned and instinctively replied, "That's impossible." David couldn't stand anyone eating in his car. He had argued with me several times over it. How could there be snack crumbs in his car? The attendant motioned for me to take a look. I bent over and peered inside, and sure enough, I saw yellow potato chip crumbs on the passenger seat, still covered in seasoning, scattered in the corners. Driving back home, I sat in the underground parking garage for a long time. Finally, I opened the dash cam footage. After searching for a while, I quickly found the footage from yesterday after work. After a moment of silence, I heard the sound of a door closing, and then a familiar female voice laughed. "You're pretty on time today." The voice was pleasant, carrying that kind of girlish softness, but my heart went cold in that instant. David said cheerfully, "How did you get out so early? Didn't your supervisor say anything?" Bianca laughed. "They all know about us. Who would dare stop me?" If those words came from a mature woman like me, it would just sound manipulative and pretentious. But from a young girl who just graduated, it seemed bold and a bit cute. Sure enough, David chuckled lightly and said nothing more. I suddenly remembered when we first got married, back when I still worked at his company. One time, I ran into him on the street and wanted to say hello, but he just ignored me and walked past as if he hadn't seen me at all. When I brought it up at home, he just frowned and said, "I don't want people at work to know about us." What would they say? That I used my position to bring my wife in? After that, his parents also wanted me to take care of him at home, so I quit my job and became a housewife. But as it turns out, he wasn't worried about people knowing about his relationships. He was just worried about people knowing about ours. The sound of a chip bag being torn open pulled me back to reality, and I heard Bianca crunching on chips. David said nothing. "Oops," Bianca said. "I got crumbs all over your car. Sorry." "It's fine," David said casually. "I'll get it cleaned later." He paused and then added, "Don't eat too many snacks. I'll take you somewhere nice to eat later." After that, there wasn't much else. In the dim garage, I sat in the car in silence for a long time. I tried not to think about the past, but memories kept coming back. Like the time 2 years ago when I was rushing to work and didn't have time for breakfast. So I brought 2 buns into David's car. He yelled at me to get out. "Get out. Don't eat in my car." I hurriedly explained, "I won't drop anything. These are mushroom-stuffed buns. They barely have any smell." But he just gave me a disgusted look, then hit the gas and sped off. I was left standing there in the garage, holding the buns, dumbfounded. It was raining that day, making it hard to get a cab. In my rush, my heel broke, and by the time I got to work, I was a mess. My supervisor chewed me out. I already had low blood sugar and hadn't eaten breakfast, so I almost passed out standing there. A coworker had to give me some crackers to keep me going, but now, he let someone else eat in his car. Turns out his rules weren't unbreakable, he just hadn't met the right person yet. I closed my eyes for a long while and took out the divorce papers from my bag. I'd printed these papers 6 months ago, but I never found the right time to bring them up. To put it bluntly, I couldn't bear to. I'd loved him for so long. He'd filled my entire youth. From the day I first liked him, I waited for him to see me, and then I watched him fall for the campus beauty. They got together. His mother disapproved of her, and they broke up. Heartbroken and pressured by his family, he chose me in a moment of desperation. But even after all these years, he never loved me. Honestly, the first time I saw Bianca, my instincts as a woman told me something was wrong. She reminded me too much of David's first love. Same striking looks, same passionate personality, bold and charming. I noticed his gaze linger on her for a few seconds before he approved her resume. Even though her qualifications didn't meet the company's requirements, The first real sign was when Bianca called once. It was all work-related, but it was odd for an intern to call the CEO directly. We were eating at the time, and David suddenly put down his chopsticks, fumbling to answer the phone. His voice was tense, like he was nervous. "Don't worry. I'll talk to Minister Lee later. He won't blame you." After he hung up, he sat there for a moment, and then a smile slowly spread across his face. That night, he was in a great mood. He even sang in the shower, something he'd never done before, and I felt like I was plunged into ice. At first, David probably didn't mean to cross any lines. He and Bianca barely interacted beyond work calls. But love can't be hidden, even if you cover your mouth. It shows in your eyes. He started coming home later and later, staying up all night texting, like a young boy falling in love for the first time. No matter how much I cried or argued, he would just say, "If you can't take it, we can divorce," and I'd back down. Thinking back, it wasn't him who defeated me, but my own love. But now, I don't want to love him anymore. Divorcing over a few chip crumbs sounds ridiculous, but this was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Chapter 2. When I handed the divorce papers to David, he was typing away and took them with an impatient look, tossing them aside. "What is it? You want to buy a house again? How many times do I have to tell you? The housing prices now." I cut him off. "It's a divorce agreement. You should take a look. There are some property division issues I want to discuss with you." David froze for a second, then grabbed the document and flipped through it casually, sneering. "Gloria, since when did you learn these drama queen tactics? I provide for you. Isn't that enough? Do I also have to act in some soap opera with you?" I looked at him and said, "If you don't have Alzheimer's, you should remember I originally had a job. It was you and your parents who insisted I quit to take care of you. Now, a live-in nanny in Hangzhou earns at least 8,000 yuan a month, which is more than enough for me to support myself. So, you haven't been supporting me. In fact, I've been taking care of you. Don't think of yourself as some kind of saint." David looked up at me, surprised, seemingly not expecting me to speak to him like that. He was quickly both angry and embarrassed. Throwing the divorce agreement aside, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I said calmly. I saw the chip crumbs on the passenger seat. David's brows furrowed. "All this over something so minor?" I nodded. "Yes, just for that. If you don't agree, that's fine. I'll take it to court. But making a big deal out of this won't look good for you either." David glared at me, silent for a moment, then yanked the papers back, signed his name with a flourish, and tossed them at me with a cold laugh. "Happy now? Gloria, I'm telling you, don't come crawling back to me like before, crying and begging." He sneered. Like a dog, a sharp pain clenched my heart. In the past, whenever I got really mad, I'd bring up divorce, but I always ended up giving in, humbling myself to ask for reconciliation. He knew exactly where my weaknesses lay, and how best to hurt me. But not anymore. I grabbed my coat. "Let's go. Might as well get the paperwork done now." This time, David didn't mock me. His expression grew serious as he stood up, staring at me. "Gloria, are you serious? You know the house you live in, the car you drive, your lifestyle, it's all because of me. Think it through. Without me, you're nothing." I glanced at him. "Stop stalling. The Civil Affairs Bureau closes at 5. We won't make it if we keep this up." "Fine." David frowned. "Gloria, don't regret this. Getting a divorce certificate was far more troublesome than getting married. There's also a 1-month cooling-off period." After we left, David didn't even look at me, drove off immediately, leaving me standing at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I took a taxi back to pack up my things. Under his livid gaze, I only took a few pieces of clothing and left. Most of what I'd accumulated over the years belonged to him. Now I realized I had very little of my own. Everything I owned could fit into a 28-inch suitcase. I hadn't found an apartment yet, so I stayed in a hotel for the time being. Lying on the bed, I realized leaving David wasn't as hard as I imagined. I used to think I'd be devastated if I left him, but now, it's not as painful as I thought it would be. On the contrary, there's a sense of relief. as if a heavy stone has finally been lifted off me. Maybe I never loved him as much as I thought I did. I was just used to loving him, without realizing that in this messy marriage, my love had already been worn away bit by bit. Chapter 3. The next day. I had planned to sleep in and enjoy some much-needed relaxation. Instead, I was jolted awake early in the morning by the sound of my phone ringing. Groggy, I picked up my phone and saw that it was David's mom calling. As soon as I answered, her voice came through. "Sorry to bother you, Gloria." Before I could respond, she continued in her usual rapid-fire manner. "Just remind David that his uncle's birthday is next Wednesday. Make sure he doesn't forget to come home. Oh, and don't drink that day. You'll need to drive back." I rubbed my temples. "Mom, why don't you just call David directly?" She responded naturally. "Oh, I didn't want to wake him. He works so hard every day. Not like you, enjoying a carefree life at home." This was something she often said. In her eyes, David's work in an office was exhausting. Meanwhile, me cooking, cleaning, and taking care of David's daily needs at home was just enjoying life. When I was asked to quit my job, they had promised to hire a housekeeper for chores. But David soon told me he didn't like strangers in the house. And since I was home, I might as well do it all myself. I gripped my phone tightly, swallowing my anger. "Sorry, ma'am. You may not know, David and I are divorced." With that, I hung up without waiting for her reaction. Peace didn't last long though. As David called that evening, I picked up, his voice void of emotion. "Come home. My parents are here." I knew it. His mom was definitely going to come over and give me a lecture. I refused immediately. "Whatever's happening at your house, deal with it yourselves. I'm an outsider now. Your parents are here too," he added before hanging up. I stared at the black screen of my phone and sighed. Since things had already escalated, there was no avoiding it. Might as well. There were some things I had wanted to make clear for a long time. Back home, sure enough, David's mom gave me a once-over and said with a smile, "You're back? Oh, young people can get temperamental. That's normal, Gloria. Maybe you've been too cooped up at home. It's good to get out and get some air." But Gloria, arguing all the time is one thing. But David still has work to do and has to support the family. And dragging your parents all the way here on a plane at their age, isn't that a bit much? I frowned slightly. David's mom loved to do this. She spoke politely on the surface but was really sly, hiding her sharpness behind her words. David sat on the couch, acting as if he heard nothing. Same as always, suppressing my disappointment. I couldn't help but mock myself. At this point, I still expected him to speak up for me. How could that ever happen? David's mom was controlling. She thought David's first girlfriend was too headstrong and refused to let him be with her, even threatening to end her life. Then they picked me, the daughter of university professors, someone with a decent background and a soft personality. I still remembered. At the tea ceremony, David's mom didn't take the tea from me for a long time, instead taking the chance to lecture me on how I needed to take good care of David. She said it was hard for him to work outside, completely ignoring the fact that I had left everything behind to move with him to an unfamiliar place. Later, David's mom often visited. She was strange. She seemed to hate seeing David and me getting along well. After we got married, there was a time when David and I were happy together. He seemed to want to make things work, and we even planned a honeymoon to the Maldives. When his mom found out, she insisted on coming with us. When we refused, she didn't argue but would always wipe her tears in places David could see when he got home. In the end, we had no choice but to let her join us. What should have been the happiest trip of my life turned into a complete disaster, one I still didn't want to remember. His mom thought I should be David's caregiver, not someone to share feelings with, just to look after his needs. She was terrifying in how she always smiled, even while tormenting me behind the scenes. I hated cilantro. I thought it had a weird taste, so I never used it at home. But when David's mom visited, she'd say she wanted to cook for us so I could take a break. But every dish would have cilantro. Every time I said I didn't like it, she'd act all apologetic, saying she was old and forgot. Then she'd keep smiling and putting cilantro in my bowl. "Gloria, try the cilantro Mom made. I promise it's different than outside. It's delicious." It made me unable to eat, but it seemed rude not to. I had complained to David a few times, and he'd snap back, "Mom's old, and she's cooking for you," instead of being grateful. "You're talking bad about her, is that appropriate, Gloria?" Or it would be the middle of summer, and while David was at work, his mom would say she couldn't find the remote for the air conditioner. Yet when David got home, the remote would miraculously appear. I'd repeatedly asked her not to touch my underwear, that I'd wash it myself, but every time I'd leave them in the laundry basket. She'd take my underwear and socks and throw them in the washing machine. David's clothes were always washed separately, never mixed with socks. None of this was major, but all these little things added up to drive me crazy. Over time, I grew more and more depressed. David noticed what his mom was doing, but he'd never confront her. As a child, during a flood in his hometown, his mom carried him on her shoulders to save his life. He was rescued, and she exhausted herself, getting swept away by the floodwaters. By some stroke of luck, she was pulled to safety by a neighbor, but she was left with lifelong health issues. Her joints ached terribly whenever it rained. David felt guilty and couldn't bring himself to say a harsh word to her, so he just avoided it, working late or sitting in the garage to escape the tension at home. That was when the last warmth between us vanished. Our relationship worsened until it was beyond repair. This time, I didn't stay silent. I looked directly at his mom. "Didn't you bring my parents here? What's that got to do with me?" She was taken aback. "Gloria, you." I stepped forward and stopped talking about David supporting the family. "I had a job before. He asked me to quit and work at his company because they needed a reliable accountant. Then when things got on track, wasn't it you all who discarded me and made me stay home to take care of him?" Back then, I earned $20,000 to $30,000 a month. Even just cooking, cleaning, taking care of 3 meals a day. How much would it cost to hire a housekeeper? How is that me living off him? So now, just because I'm not married to him, does that mean he won't work anymore? David stood up. "Gloria, how can you talk to Mom like that?" I snapped, taking long strides towards him and shouting, "She's your mom, not mine. Don't try to guilt me. She never raised me for a day. I called her mom out of respect for you. But now I'm divorcing you. You want to keep calling her mom everywhere you go. That's your business, not mine." David frowned, about to say something, but I cut him off. "And now you dare to raise your voice at me? Where were you when she forced me to eat cilantro? When she wouldn't let me turn on the air conditioner during the summer? When she insisted on joining our honeymoon? You coward. All you ever did was hide in the garage, never saying a single word." "David, do you really think you're a man? What kind of person are you?" I screamed, all the grievances and anger of the past years pouring out, until my eyes were red, and I'd lost all reason, almost to the point of madness. Everyone in the house was stunned. David's eyes widened, every word seemingly stuck in his throat. After a moment, his expression turned complicated. Perhaps it was just my imagination, but I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. My dad's face turned a dark shade in anger, and my mom held me close, tears streaming down her face. "Glow," she said, her voice trembling. I buried my face in her arms, crying silently. It was only now that I realized the ones I'd wronged the most were my parents, who had been against my relationship with David but relented for my sake. And, of course, myself, having endured so much pain. David's mom quickly tried to regain composure, her smile no longer reaching her eyes. "We're all family, Gloria. It looks like you've held some resentment towards me. Maybe it's because I'm getting old, and I make mistakes. But Gloria, I've always treated you like my own daughter." That line might have worked on my naive younger self, but not on my mother, who immediately turned her head, sneering. "I'm not dead yet. She doesn't need you as her mother." David's mom's forced smile wavered. "In-law, what are you saying? Gloria's just a child who doesn't understand. Why are you, an elder, making things difficult too?" My mom gave a cold laugh, pulling me away. "You cried and begged to marry him back then, and we couldn't stop you. Now that you've come to your senses, good. Come on, we're going home." With that, the 3 of us were about to leave. David hurried over to stop us. "Mom, this is a misunderstanding. Please don't. My dad pulled his arm away, his voice cold. When she wanted to marry you, I was against it. But Glow loved you, so we had no choice. We didn't ask for a dowry, a house, or a car. We even gave Glow a 50,000 yuan dowry, just to show some goodwill, hoping you'd treat her well. How did you promise me back then? David had no response. My dad suppressed his rage. You said you'd treat her well, and now? My dad had always been cheerful, always addressing David affectionately. Even when David missed family events, he never complained and even told me not to argue with David, saying our son-in-law was busy. This was the first time he spoke so harshly. David, embarrassed, took a step back. Dad, don't call me Dad. I have no son like you. David's mom tried to speak again, but my mom glared at her. Get lost. Don't make me slap you. My mom had always been gentle, her voice soft and calm. It was the first time I saw her so fiercely protective. In the end, I didn't go home, mainly because there was still a month of cooling off period. Plus I needed to deal with dividing our assets. My parents had to work and couldn't stay long, but they left me some money before they left, reminding me, don't feel wronged, relax this month, and tell us if you need anything. That night, lying in the hotel bed, I finally had a good night's sleep. In the 4th year of my marriage, I developed severe insomnia, maybe from dealing with David's mom or his relationship with Bianca. There were nights I'd lie awake until dawn. At times, I felt too tired to do anything, questioning the point of being alive. A diagnosis confirmed moderate depression, and though I took the prescribed medication, it didn't help much. Sleep still eluded me, but now, I closed my eyes, feeling a weight lift off me. I could finally have a good dream. Chapter 4. I began submitting resumes and looking for work, though my parents offered to support me and encouraged me to take more time to relax. I was eager to reconnect with society. In fact, my university was even better than David's. I originally received offers from the Big Four accounting firms, but after working there for a while, David convinced me to quit. Back then, his company's accountant left, and he couldn't find anyone trustworthy to take over. So I went to work for his company. When they found someone suitable, he asked me to quit again. So for the past few years, I had been a stay-at-home wife. Sometimes I saw my former classmates' posts on social media. Some had achieved their dreams, working at the Big Four or moving abroad to Wall Street. Others had started their own businesses, or returned to their hometowns to take civil service exams, happily settled with their families. And here I was, with nothing left after all these years but a failed marriage. At least I was still young and could start over. That evening, when I returned to the hotel, my phone suddenly received a notification. It was from the home security system, notifying me that someone had entered the house. I was about to dismiss it, but accidentally tapped on it, and the video feed opened. David and Bianca were entering the house together. I froze but didn't turn off the video. Just after I left, he couldn't wait to bring her home. Of course, he must have been waiting for this for a long time. When I filed for divorce, he was probably overjoyed. David looked drunk, his eyes half closed and his steps unsteady. Bianca struggled to support him, helping him onto the couch before pouring him a glass of water. David took a sip and immediately spat it out, frowning. Cold water? Where's the hangover soup? Bianca sighed helplessly. What hangover soup? I don't know how to make that. Just drink some water for now. David threw the glass on the floor, wobbling as he tried to stand up, while Bianca smirked and helped him towards the bedroom. It was disgusting. The thought of them being together in the bed I once slept in made me nauseous. To my surprise, before long, David came stumbling out of the bedroom, half-dressed. Bianca, wearing only a thin camisole, hurried after him, trying to pull him back, but he angrily pushed her away, slurring, "You're not my wife. You're not." Bianca bit her lip. "I'm Bianca, aren't I? Didn't you say you were divorcing your wife?" "No, I didn't." David waved his arms, mumbling, "I'm not divorced. I won't get divorced. You're not my wife. Who are you? Get out!" Frustrated and angry, Bianca hastily put her clothes back on and stormed out. David stumbled and fell to the floor, groaning, "Gloria, I fell. The living room fell silent. He muttered again, "Gloria, my head hurts. Come and rub it for me." No one answered. He just lay there, pitifully falling asleep in the living room. I put down my phone, not sure how I felt. I thought that after the divorce, David would immediately be with Bianca. I thought he really liked her. David was a man of principles. At least when it came to me, he didn't allow me to reveal our relationship to anyone at his company. He didn't allow me to eat in the car. There were so many things he didn't allow me to do, but none of these rules seemed to apply to Bianca. He had no principles when it came to her. Sometimes, I hated him. If I hadn't known how biased he was towards her, I wouldn't have felt so pathetic and so pitiful. I sneered. He wanted me around just to take care of him. Whenever David drank too much, I'd make hangover soup for him, rub his head until he fell asleep, and prepare his favorite light meals the next morning. He must have gotten used to being cared for like that. At 2 a.m., I woke up thirsty, got up to drink some water, and found myself unable to fall back asleep. I thought for a moment and reopened the surveillance. David was awake now, sitting alone on the couch in the dark, staring blankly. He still seemed disoriented. After a while, he clutched his stomach and spoke hoarsely. "Gloria, my stomach hurts. Where's my medicine?" David had overstrained himself with work and socializing, damaging his stomach. Over the years, I'd managed to nurse him back to health, but every time he drank, the pain returned. I used to sort his medication into labeled containers, noting how many pills to take and their expiration dates for easy reference. Despite taking the medicine so many times, he still didn't know where it was. The surveillance system allowed me to talk through my phone, but I stayed silent, watching coldly. David bent over slightly, raising his voice. "Gloria, Gloria." Only the ticking of the clock responded. He struggled to his feet and began searching for the medicine. The organized cabinets I had put in order were now in disarray, everything thrown onto the floor. Finally, when he searched beneath the TV stand, he found the box of medicine I had left. David picked it up, staring blankly at the note on it instead of taking any pills. I could recall every word on that note, even with my eyes closed. Aluminum magnesium chewable tablets. Take 1 to 2 at a time, 3 times a day, 1 to 2 hours after meals or before bed. I had written every word carefully. I naively believed that sincerity would be reciprocated, that love would lead to love. Only in the end did I understand that what I thought was a brave leap of faith was just trash in others' eyes, easily kicked aside. David was still crouching, staring intently at that box of medicine. After what felt like forever, he slowly lowered his head onto his knees, saying nothing. He didn't take the medicine that night. Instead, he sat alone in the living room, smoking, just sitting there silently all night. Chapter 5. When I went to David's company to go over the accounts and divide the assets, I ran into Bianca. I pretended not to see her, trying to walk past. Honestly, I never liked blaming women entirely for cheating. If David could have controlled himself, none of this would have happened. But Bianca stepped forward and blocked my way. "Gloria, right? I want to talk to you." I looked her over, just as I thought, a fresh graduate, full of youthful energy and undisguised provocation. It was as if she'd already assumed the role of the wife. "I don't think we have anything to talk about. There wouldn't be any connection between us going forward." But Bianca didn't agree. Stepping closer, "I think we need to talk. I want to discuss David with you. It won't take more than half an hour." I thought for a moment and agreed, mostly because I didn't want her bothering me again. If I didn't deal with her today, she'd likely pester me tomorrow. Plus, I was curious about what she wanted to say. In the coffee shop downstairs from the company, Bianca ordered a cup of Blue Mountain coffee, smiling as she spoke. "The coffee here is really good. I heard the owner personally brings the beans back and grinds them by hand. It's David's favorite." I forced a smile. Freshly graduated, she still had that naive arrogance, thinking she could manipulate others' emotions. I said impatiently, "What do you want to say?" Bianca took a sip of her coffee. "David doesn't like you, he told me himself. I'm grateful you had the sense to divorce him, but I think now that you're separated, there's no need for further entanglement." I understood. Last night, David must have called my name and pushed her away, making her lose face. It must have triggered her insecurity, which was why she was eager to assert her dominance today. I lowered my gaze. First of all, whether we divorce or not is between David and me. It's none of your business. If I decide not to divorce him, what can you do? Secondly, David and I are legally married. What position do you think you're speaking from? The third party who ruined someone else's marriage? Do you think if I expose your involvement, David would risk his career for you? After all these years of effort, which would he choose, you or his career? I lifted my head and looked at Bianca. I don't want to argue with you, it's beneath me. But if you dare to provoke me again, I won't be as nice. Bianca's face turned pale, her teeth clenched, unable to say a word. I stood up, chuckling lightly. Oh, by the way, he only drinks instant coffee at home. Have you ever even had real hand-ground coffee? With that, I picked up my bag and left. Upstairs, David rushed into the finance office. His expression was complicated, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, he managed to get out. Have you eaten yet? Let's go eat together later. I looked at him in surprise. He almost seemed cautious. David pursed his lips, looking away. David, who was always indifferent towards me. What had gotten into him? Was he still hungover from last night? It was almost as if he was trying to make peace. David said quietly, I've thought about it. I was wrong before. I won't be in contact with Bianca anymore. I've transferred her to a branch office. She won't be around you anymore. I frowned. David, did you take the wrong medicine? He instinctively looked angry but suppressed it and continued. I don't think we need to go through with this. We've been together for so many years. Gloria, let's just let this go. I laughed coldly. Can you really break up with Bianca? David replied calmly. She was just a temporary interest. Don't overthink it. Nothing happened between us. I actually believed that. Even when David and Bianca were closest, he never stayed out all night. Last night, he pushed her away in that situation. I figured he was just looking for the shadow of his first love in Bianca. But what did it matter, whether he loved this person or that? It was never going to be me. I'm not interested. I spoke with a blank expression. Just divide the assets quickly. I'm ready to finalize the paperwork and go home. David frowned. Gloria, you once said you loved me and wanted to marry me. What's gotten into you now? Is it really just because of those chips? Even now, he was still talking about the chips. Someone who had navigated the business world for so long, how could he not know what I really cared about? He was just intentionally avoiding the real issue. I leaned closer, speaking softly. David, do you know what the non-renewable resources in this world are? He looked confused. What? Coal, oil, natural gas, and love. David was stunned. Love is such a strange thing. It can be the strongest armor and spear, unstoppable and relentless. But love is also the most fragile thing in the world, easily worn away without you even realizing. My love was already used up. Like a fire that had burned out. There was nothing left. Chapter 6. David must have lost his mind, because he suddenly started apologizing to me. He began calling and texting me every day. There was nothing important, just messages like, I found a nice restaurant. Let's go there tonight. How about we go on another honeymoon? Maybe this time to the seaside? The gardenias by the road are blooming beautifully. Should we buy a pot to keep at home? It was like he'd suddenly changed. I even wondered if David had been possessed. These were the kinds of messages I used to send to him, but he rarely replied. After he got involved with Bianca, we barely communicated at all. Thinking it over, I realized David was panicking. People are inherently selfish. All their actions are driven by the desire for comfort. When we were together, he found me boring and sought his first love's shadow in Bianca to make himself happier. Now, seeing that I might leave, he couldn't bear to lose me, someone who had loved him wholeheartedly and cared for him without reservation. Weighed against each other, he decided I was more important. After all, there were young girls everywhere, but there was only one fool like me who loved him so much. So he wanted to return to his comfort zone, even if it meant sending Bianca away. Did he love me? I didn't think so. Maybe he didn't love his first love either. If he had, He wouldn't have broken up just because his mom disapproved. He didn't love Bianca, otherwise. He wouldn't have cut ties so easily. He certainly didn't love me. He was just attached to the comfort and security I provided. He wanted someone standing behind him, always there when he turned around. Honestly, looking back now, I find my past self unbelievably pathetic. He and his mother tormented me, and I endured it. Maybe being blinded by love really strips you of your humanity. I had to eat enough bitterness, cry enough tears, hit the wall head-on before I was willing to turn around. For the next few weeks, David seemed like a different person, coming to the hotel where I was staying every day. He would call me, "I brought your favorite soup dumplings. Come down and try them." There was even a hint of flattery in his voice, just like how I used to be. I suddenly remembered, back when we were together, I loved those soup dumplings. But the shop was far away and didn't deliver. David would only pass by it on his way home. I'd asked him many times to bring me some, but he never did. Not even once. Every time I asked, he either forgot or was too tired. Now, suddenly, he wanted to buy them for me, but I no longer wanted them. I ignored David. After the 1-month cooling-off period ended, I called him directly to finalize the divorce. David was reluctant at first. "Gloria, I really don't think we need to do this." I said I'd change, and besides, at your age, how will you live after a divorce? He was still spouting that nonsense. "Don't worry about it, David. Are you reluctant to divorce me?" I mocked. "Why are you clinging like a dog?" These were his words to me before, now returned as they were. David didn't get angry, he just lowered his head and said in a muffled voice, "So, you're really not coming back, are you?" I was resolute. "No." The setting sun stretched David's shadow long. Only then did I notice he seemed much thinner, his shadow lonely and slender on the ground. "Finally," he said softly, "I understand." The divorce was settled quickly. David didn't argue over the division of assets, letting me take half of what he had. When David's mother found out I was taking half, she almost cursed herself hoarse. The last layer of her facade was torn away as she screamed that I was shameless, that I only wanted his money, sucking him dry. I didn't listen, simply retorting, "Mind your own business. If you keep interfering, watch your lifespan." Then I hung up. David's mother tried her usual trick again, threatening him with her life, insisting he take me to court and leave me penniless. But for some reason, he didn't listen to her this time. I wasn't interested in knowing why. I got a job at an accounting firm. It wasn't one of the big four, but it was good enough. Conveniently, they had a branch in my hometown, so I applied to work there and went back home. My parents no longer pressured me to get married. Every day after work, I'd come home to eat dinner. On weekends, we went on trips, took strolls together. Life was happy, day after day. I never thought about the past again. Only occasionally, in the middle of the night, would I feel like it had all happened in another lifetime. Those nights of crying, the pain I thought I could never forget. I thought I'd never get over it. But now, I could barely remember that sadness. I stopped taking the medication. I wasn't depressed anymore. I slept 8 hours every night, never struggling with insomnia again. How wonderful. Chapter 7. I learned what happened afterward from mutual friends. After the divorce, David fell into a slump, going out drinking every day and neglecting the company. Several major deals fell through, causing the company's cash flow to break. In the end, he had no choice but to declare bankruptcy. His mother tried to force him to go on blind dates, but he refused every time. Once, he even got drunk and cursed her, blaming her for our divorce and telling her to get lost. His mother was so angry that she ended up in the hospital with high blood pressure. David didn't care, and his father was just as indifferent, leaving her alone in the hospital. No one knows how she is now. After breaking up with David, Bianca still hadn't learned her lesson. She hooked up with another senior executive at her company, but his wife found out. The wife made a scene at the company and scratched Bianca's face. She even hung a banner outside the office building and rented a car with a loudspeaker, broadcasting, "Thanks to Bianca from Xinyao for solving my husband's needs for free." Somehow, She even got hold of nude photos Bianca had sent to that executive and mass emailed them to everyone at the company. Bianca was beaten several times in public by the wife. She couldn't stay at the company anymore, and I heard she had some kind of mental breakdown and was taken back to her parents' rural hometown. That mutual friend sighed at the end. You guys used to be so good together. Everyone envied G for having a wife like you. Why did he have to go and ruin everything? After hanging up the phone, I wasn't sure how I felt. Part of me felt vindicated, but there was also a sense of complexity. People never know how to cherish what they have until it's gone. But unfortunately, no one will wait forever. Glow, come out and see the place your dad and I picked. Let's go to Spain for vacation during the holiday. Shall we? My mom called from outside. I put down my phone, smiling. Coming! The cold night had ended. Looking back, I could see the dawn. Epilogue, David's perspective. When I got home, Gloria was sitting on the couch. For once, there wasn't a meal waiting on the table. She said, "Let's get a divorce." I stopped in my tracks and couldn't help but laugh coldly. Here we go again. Didn't she remember the last time she brought up divorce, how she ended up crying and begging me to stay? She said it was because of the chips in the passenger seat. I remembered, Bianca had eaten those in my car the day before. Just because of this? I couldn't understand. What are you freaking out for? But she didn't cry and question me like before. She just said coldly, yes, just because of this. She knew about Bianca already. So what if there were some chips? I didn't want to hear her nagging, so I said casually, fine, Gloria. Don't regret it. I knew she'd regret it. Gloria loved me so much. She gave up everything to be with me, no matter how badly I treated her. She always stayed by my side. She was always afraid I'd leave her. There was never a time I feared her leaving me. I didn't expect her to be serious this time. Even after I brought in both of our parents, she didn't budge. I was irritated. Hadn't we been living like this for years? Hadn't I given her enough? Everything she ate, drank, used, had I ever mistreated her? I admitted I liked Bianca. She reminded me of my first love, though I could barely remember my first love's face. That youthful feeling made me feel young again. So what if a man finds some excitement outside? I never did anything physical with her, and I never let her threaten Gloria's position. Why did Gloria have to take it so seriously? Still as infuriating as always. She said many things about how my mom treated her poorly. I stayed silent. I remembered, my mom had been harsh to her. My mom had always been controlling. Jealous of our closeness, I knew that too. But what could I do? She was my mom. But when her dad asked how I had promised him back then, I felt a pang of guilt. Gloria had been so good to me, yet all these years, I had treated her so poorly. She left, taking only a few pieces of clothing. Let her leave then, it's not like I couldn't live without her. The world keeps spinning no matter who leaves. Now I could finally be with Bianca openly. But strangely, I suddenly lost interest in Bianca. When I was with her, I couldn't help wondering what Gloria was doing. I was drunk, and Bianca brought me water, cold water. If Gloria were still here, she would have made hangover soup. No matter how late it was at night, the soup would always be the perfect temperature when I drank it. In the morning, she'd have a table of food prepared. Then she'd gently tell me not to drink anymore for the next few days, to take care of my stomach. Back then, I never thought much about it. Thinking about it now, did she stay up all night just to take care of me? Looking at Bianca's meticulously made-up face, I suddenly felt nauseous. I kicked her out. In the middle of the night, I woke up lying on the floor, my stomach aching. Where was Gloria? How could she leave me here alone? I called her name loudly, but only the ticking of the clock responded. Oh, it suddenly hit me. Gloria was gone. She wanted a divorce. I had to get up and look for the medicine myself. She used to bring it to me whenever I frowned, but now I couldn't find it anywhere. Where had she put it? I found it. There was still a note in her handwriting on it. Aluminum magnesium chewable tablets. Take 1 to 2 tablets at a time, 3 times a day, 1 to 2 hours after meals or before bed. I froze. Memories I had forgotten came flooding back. I remembered when we first got married, she put all the medicine into a box, labeling each one. I laughed at her. Are you sick? Isn't this unnecessary and redundant? She wasn't annoyed, she just smiled and said, You always take the wrong medicine. If I'm not home one day, at least you'll know how to take it. Back then, I dismissed it, thinking she was just nagging like an old woman, making a fuss over nothing. She wanted to revolve around me 24/7, how could she ever not be home? But now, my heart hurt so badly. I couldn't understand why. Turns out, she really could not be home. In the end, I couldn't tell if it was my stomach or my heart that hurt more. It felt like all my organs had twisted into a knot. Gloria. Suddenly, I missed her so much. Gloria didn't come back this time, no matter how hard I tried to win her back. The day we got the divorce certificate, she left for her hometown without looking back. The house was still the same, but for some reason, it felt unbearably empty. I didn't dare go home. Every corner of the house carried traces of her. Reminders of her life there, they were enough to drive me insane. If I hadn't experienced her warmth, her leaving wouldn't have been so unbearable. So this was what heartbreak felt like. Before losing consciousness from drinking, I couldn't help but think, so this is how she used to feel. Later, I started secretly checking her Weibo. She'd gained some weight. Her eyes had a sparkle again. She genuinely looked happy. That's when I realized she had truly moved on. And I finally understood, the hardest part wasn't the day she left. It was every day after that, knowing she'd never come back.